Tomorrow, UFC 302. Who are you guys picking for the main event? Let me know in the comments. Frankly, I don't see a scenario where Dustin Poirier pulls this off. I think there might be one path that he can take to achieve victory, but that is a really hard path to go down when it comes to Islam Makhachev and these Dagestani fighters. What Dustin, because there's no other way he's winning this fight, right? Like, I don't think there's any chance he's winning by guillotine. Islam is not getting submitted by guillotine, period. And Islam has very good striking. He has very good grappling. I don't think there's anywhere that this fight can go where Islam won't be superior, with the exception of Poirier's boxing, right? But if somehow Poirier can make this a dirty war, something that requires him to gut it out, go shot for shot, tit for tat, I think he has a really good chance of winning. But if it's not a war like that, and by the way, that is a big if, right? Because as soon as it starts to look that way, I feel like Islam's going to go back to his base, which is to wrestle, which is to grapple, which is to do judo, all of this kind of stuff, to avoid it being this sort of long, drawn-out war-type situation, right? Whereas Poirier doesn't mind a firefight like that. You know, he's been in several of them with Gaethje, with Dan Hooker, different things like that. So, because the reality is this, right? The way that Poirier wins this fight is he knocks out Islam Makhachev. That's the one thing he can do, right? You know, catch him on the break of a clinch, you know, catch him with an inside shot, maybe like an uppercut when he shoots, something like that, right? I don't think he's going to be able to do it any other way, right? And I think the only scenario where he can make that type of thing happen, because if it's like a crisp, clean fight, right, Islam is going to have a 100% advantage in almost every department. But if he can make it dirty where Islam has to shoot out of desperation, right, where Islam has to take this to a realm that he's more comfortable, then he might be able to catch him with something, right? Catch him in a brink on the clinch, catch him, you know, coming in on the takedown attempt. A scenario like that. Because, you know, Islam, like I said, he has the superior grappling, the wrestling, the control. He's probably got some that judo in his pedigree there, right? And he's got some great striking defense as well. So he's pretty hard to hit, right? In the fights with Charles Oliveira, Volk, all these things, we saw him be, you know, him being difficult to hit. Like, the sequence that made him win the title was him countering one of Charles's strikes. And we could very well see the same thing with Dustin Poirier. So, really and truly, like, and the other thing too is like Islam, so grappling submissions, Islam wins there. You know, maybe in sort of like a fighting in a phone booth scenario, I think Poirier has the better boxing and probably the better finishing power, right? Like, he probably has the heavier hands, the more knockout power, right? But even then, so like I said, I think one of the only ways Poirier is gonna be able to make this happen tomorrow is by making it super dirty, you know. But the risk of doing that, right, is like dirty boxing. You have to get into close enough range where you're at the risk of being taken down, right? Like, if Poirier clinches up, now you're in a grappling scenario, right? If Poirier gets in super close, now you're at risk of the shot. And the other thing, too, is if he does get to the point where he can, you know, get a knockdown on Islam, which, like, that's a big if. But if he can, because Islam can be knocked out. if you've been knocked out once, you can be knocked out again. Islam was knocked out, I think, in his first fight in the UFC. But it hasn't happened since, right? If he wins tomorrow, he will have the longest winning streak of any fighter in UFC history. I think if he wins tomorrow night, he will be at least tied with Khabib for the greatest lightweight of all time. Because, 3 title defenses. You know, there's still that dominance factor and the fact that he doesn't have an O beside his name, right? But it's one of these things that, lots is riding on this, but for Poirier, it is the final showdown, right? This is the last chance he's going to get at a title, period. So, there could be a level of like desperation and heart in there where he can get it done. But once again, like, I just think in almost every realm, with the exception of boxing, and if he can make it like a gritty, blood-filled, gutsy war, I think that's going to be the only scenario where, he might force Islam to make a mistake, right? Because if he can turn it into that, then he can probably force Islam to shoot. He can force and maybe, just maybe, Islam makes a mistake, right? Maybe, just maybe, he catches them on a break. Maybe he catches them coming in for the shot, right? But even if he catches them, like, unless he knocks them out with one shot, right, it's hard because now you're in a situation where you've got to grapple. Like, because if you remember, like I said, if you remember the Oliveira fight, he knocked down Oliveira, but he wouldn't go to the ground with him because he didn't want to have to contend with the ground game of Oliveira, right? Whereas Islam, like, he's got a similar ground game, scrambles, wrestling, all that kind of stuff. So, I know Dustin Poirier is a heavy hitter, but I don't think he's heavy enough to, and maybe he is heavy enough to knock out Islam with one shot. But if he does, he has to be prepared to pounce if he gets that opportunity. Which, like, that's once again big if, highly unlikely. I really don't see a scenario where he beats Islam. But if he does, it's kind of the way that I mentioned, right? A war, a knockout. It has to be a combination of that. And the big danger is, in order to make that happen, there needs to be clinch work. There needs to be lots of striking, dirty boxing, things like that. And that puts you in danger of being put on your ass and strangled by Islam. So it's a really tough situation for Poirier. Anything is possible. Anything he could do it. Maybe very slim chance. I don't think a guillotine's happening. I think the only way he wins this is by knockout. And the only way to make that knockout happen is to try to make Islam uncomfortable. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. And we'll see you guys soon.